to read an entire book in 30 minutes to 2 hours with full retention? Well, me too. I'm always looking for a faster and more effective way to digest and comprehend more content to save more time, make more money, and get more out of my life, my business, and my relationships. And that's what this is. It's a shortcut to reading in 5 easy steps. My name is Mike Koenigs, and I've been working with all sorts of celebrities, authors, experts, and speakers for quite a few years, including Tony Robbins, Harvey Mackay, Bill Glazer, and most recently, Tim Ferriss. Now, what I'm going to share with you today, it's not going to take the fun out of reading. In fact, it can and will make it a lot more fun to do. And there are 3 really great additional benefits to this process. Now, one of them is you're going to learn some super valuable skills that are useful for any profession or any job. And what I'll share with you can turn you into a very great presenter, speaker, or interviewer. And there's a great additional byproduct. It can really make you happy. Now, I created the process I'm going to share with you myself. But I've read and studied a lot of speed reading and advanced learning and memory optimization strategies and modeled and integrated all of these into my own process that I've been using for several years with what I would consider massive success. In fact, I regularly read 2 to 5 books a week, and it's not uncommon for me to order about 10 books from one of my favorite places in the world, and that's Amazon. Now, before I continue, I do want to credit photo reading from Learning Strategies. That's Paul Sheely and Pete Bissonnette for making what I think is one of the better systems for whole brain learning. And one portion of one of the 5 steps is modeled after what they teach here. Now, the other thing I want to acknowledge, and thank you guys, is my mastermind group for pushing me to not only write the article, but also to turn it into a video, because I've been thinking about doing this for over a year, and I just haven't gotten around to it until now. And after our last mastermind meeting, everyone was like, I had 3 guys wrote back to me and said, hey, is there some way you can turn this into a video? So this is for you guys. So, one more quick little request, and that is to please suspend your disbelief and your judgment until we get to the end of this video, because one of the 5 parts will seem a little bit woo-woo at first, but it'll make complete sense when we get to the end. So, I've got a couple little statistics for you before we begin about how we retain information. You may have heard or seen this before, but we retain, on average, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we hear and see, about 70% of what we discuss, and then 90% of what we make and manage, or in our case, what we teach. Now, I do a lot of interviews with celebrities and authors, and as I mentioned earlier, so I've got Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, Ariel Ford, Harvey Mackay, Brian Tracy, and a bunch of others. Now, a lot of the interviews that I do are with authors, and you can see some of them at 4hourbodybook.com, MackayBook.com, and DanKennedyBook.com. So if you're wondering, well, what's this have to do with speed reading and comprehension, stick with me, because here's the 5-step process. The entire system begins with mindset, then it goes to preparation, then follows with a 3 simple exercise process. And once you have the system down, you're going to eventually get to the point where you can fully consume and retain a book in as little as an hour. Okay? So I'm going to use some of these as example. I'll even show you some of my notes inside here. So what we're going to begin with is mindset. And what you begin with is your intention. And that is, why am I reading this book? Most recently, I did this with Tim Ferriss's excellent 4-Hour Body book because I had an opportunity to interview him. I'll tell you a little bit more about the process. So what I asked myself is, what do I want to learn out of this book? And for example, some of the things that Tim advertises on the book, and I wrote some of these down, and when I paged through it, I thought about all these things. And again, I'll go through the entire step-by-step process, but here's a couple of them. So how to lose 20 pounds in 30 days without exercise on the slow-carb diet. Another one is how to prevent fat gain while binging. How to increase fat loss 300% with a few bags of ice. That's pretty intriguing. How Tim gained 34 pounds of muscle in 28 days. I don't know a man around who wouldn't want to do that. How to sleep 2 hours per day and feel fully rested. Pretty interesting. How to produce 15-minute female orgasms. Okay. How to triple testosterone and double sperm count. How to go from running 5 kilometers to 50 kilometers in 12 weeks. How to reverse permanent injuries. You get the idea here. Pretty nice. I mean, one of the things that Tim is amazing at doing is really getting down into the meat and giving you some great hooks here. But that's part of the process, is coming up with the hooks. So after you've determined what you want to learn, you're going to position yourself as a teacher. You're going to teach the content from the book. And that's really the central core and theme of what I do here. Because when you're in service and you practice what you read, your comprehension goes to that 90% or greater. So a big part of this is really a different mind game that you give yourself. And what I do is I answer the simple question. What would I want to teach in this book if I knew and understood everything that was in it? In other words, I want to basically transfer everything that's in this thing into my mind so I can share it and teach it with someone else. So the way I read the book, and this is another central core concept, is you read the book as if you're going to have an opportunity to interview the writer. So the goal is to share every major concept in the book in a 20-minute interview with the author after you finish this process. Now, if it ends up being a 2-hour interview, fine. That was basically what happened with Tim Ferriss, is I ended up getting 14 really key concepts out of the book that I interviewed with him, and each response, every dialogue, was somewhere between probably 3 and 8 minutes in duration. It ended up being great content, and again, you'll be able to check that out at 4hourbodybook.com and see exactly what I do with it and really how I designed the process. So the next step in this is the system and its preparation. So what you do is you open up the book and you read the back cover, which is what I did here. That's where I got some of these great bullets, and then everything that's on the flaps. Okay, so the front and back flap. That gets you inside the mindset of the author, who they are, what this is about. And I truly believe, and this is a great exercise in copywriting, the greatest copywriters, the greatest communicators are incredibly empathic and compassionate people. So the more you feel, the more you invest your emotions in this process, the more you're going to learn. Okay? Now the next step is you page through the table of contents. All right? So what you do is you actually pop it open and you really actually read this. So you're basically going through and comprehending every single thing that's promised in the book. And again, part of this whole mindset thing is I believe that commitment is the perfect foundation for forward momentum, forward progress. So if you imagine yourself committing to a presentation that you're going to make and teach, that's going to put you in a different place. It's giving you a deadline, okay? So if you imagine yourself having to actually present what you're about to learn here in 2 hours to a group of 20 people who need the content more than anyone else, okay? And that's another part of another step in a moment. That's going to make all the difference. So the other thing that you'll look through is the index. So what this prep prepares your mind for is everything that gets discussed in here. And again, you just have to scan through it. So again, what it does is it prepares you for all the stuff, all the meat that's inside this book. And it also appeals to the detail side of your brain, the certainty part of your brain. That's part of a central core need that we all have. Now, here is what I do next, and you can see it. In every book I ever read, I open up a flap, and I write down all the questions that I want to answer. In every one of my books, if you ever page through them, you'll see that I've got tons and tons of questions at the front of it. And when I'm about to interview an author for real or imagined, that's what I do here. I write down every question that I want to have an answer for. I also, and you'll see this in a little while, I put a page number next to it. Okay? So, That's what I basically do. So that's the process. One more time, the preparation is read the back, covers, the flaps, the bullets, go through the table of contents, go through the index, and just in the first glance, write down all the questions that I want to answer. Imagine myself being able to take time with the author and ask them any questions. And by this time, I already know who they are. I know about them, so I'm emotionally involved, and I'm committed. Now, the next step is the intentional or whole brain reading. And the goal here is to get your subconscious and your emotions working for you. So what I imagine being able to do is a Vulcan mind meld with the author, to have a personal relationship, a connection with them, and be able to instantly transfer their knowledge into my mind. So it's not the book anymore, it's actually the person. This is why I spent that time getting emotionally invested in that individual. So the next thing that you want to do is you want to get your physiology into it. So you're taking a big deep breath, and one of the exercises I do, this is one of my techniques and strategies for getting on camera, is I get inside my heart. Again, getting emotionally connected is another part of this. So again, I get really connected with my intentions, and I clear my mind, and I get out of thinking. Because what we're going to start using next is object recognition. Those are images where you're going to be visualizing images, whole paragraphs and concepts that are going to transfer into our mind. And this is the part where I learned some of this strategy from the photo reading course that I gave credit to earlier. You're going to begin by scanning the entire book for headlines, objects, groups of words, and you're going to flip through one page every 1 to 2 seconds and do something that's considered full mind reading. It's teaching your subconscious to bring in the content and see with your mind, not your eyes. And this is the part that I said would be a little bit woo-woo. So basically what you do is you open up the book and get yourself in a good mindset, loving, connected, etc., etc. And what I do is I start flipping through the book like this. I start looking at the bullets. Now, so I'm going and looking at headlines, everything that's bold and big and objects, and I'm looking at the entire page at once. And I liken this, if you've ever hunted before, what a hunter does is they don't look at leaves and objects. What they're doing is they're looking for movement. Because squirrels or birds or whatever they're hunting is going to move, and that's going to attract your attention. It's really getting into a different frame of different mindset. But again, when you're in that whole-brained mode, you're just allowing all this stuff to be pushed into your subconscious, and what you're doing is breathing. So you're going... So what do I see? The future's already here, the 80-20 principle, Wall Street, human machine. I'm seeing objects, I'm seeing numbers, okay? And then I'm seeing bullets. How to use this book, 5 rules. I know there's rules. Rule number 1, think of this book as a buffet. Rapid fat loss, rapid muscle gain, rapid strength gain, total well-being. Rule 2, rule 3, billionaire productivity secret. And then I see objects again. So the whole idea is, I'm not thinking about it though. I'm trying not to think. I'm just breathing. So again, it's just like... Okay, you get the idea. Again, this may be, if you're a skeptic, you're like, how in the heck does this work? This is the part where it's a little bit of trust, confidence. Your brain adjusts to this, and it does it faster. I think about it as though I'm drinking and pouring the information into my brain. All right? So, again, you can use your breathing as a metronome, and this is why getting into a pattern of 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, dot, 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 dot. I just have a little thing going through my head. Whatever feels comfortable to you, you're going to find yourself getting into a mode if you allow yourself to trust this process. Or more specifically, when you allow your brain to get into this. So you're using your entire field of vision. Now, the second step is what I call the physical process. Now, this is the one that involves your body and your physiology. Now, Tony Robbins talks about how whatever your body does, your mind will follow. And what you do is you go back to the front of the book and you get connected with your questions again, okay? And then you read with a pen. I always have either a red or a black pen, and then I grab a yellow or a pink highlighter. I like having the difference because, again, it gets me physically involved, kind of switching back and forth, and this is really fun. So what I do is I very, very rapidly go through the book and I highlight key concepts that stand out. Again, what I believe has happened at this point is my subconscious has allowed me to fill up my mind with objects, and I'm reminded as I go through this. Believe it or not, like I say, I not only believe it works, I know it works. And as I highlight the key concepts, that's again where I look for those and I write down questions, answers, and page numbers back in the front of the book. This process of getting involved, again, I turn it into a little bit of a game. Now, when I just started this, I actually would turn an egg timer, and I'd give myself anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes to go through the entire book. Believe it or not, you can burn through a 250-page to 300-page book in 20 to 30 minutes, especially if you hear this tick, 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 tick. I make it a game, I make it fun, and again, it's physical. I'm moving back and forth, writing it down as fast as I can, and I get connected, and again, I'm getting associated. I'm remembering that class I'm about to teach with the people I know need this information more than anything, and I have that opportunity to sit down with this author that I'm connected with emotionally that I'm going to be able to interview. They're coming in 2 hours. I've got a deadline, and I get excited. I get associated with it. So, remember, you're reviewing the original questions that you asked at the beginning of the book, and you're responding to them by looking for the answers, okay? Now, the third step in the process is what I call the summarize. Now, this is where you're getting your mind involved, and you're connecting the subconscious, the physical, the intentions, and the outcome. So what I do next, I actually type this. Normally I like the analog process. You'll notice that I mentioned that I write all of this down. So this is where I open up the book and I type up all the questions, and then I write down a short summary of what the book is about. Again, I imagine myself interviewing the author in front of an audience or a camera. Now, if you, for example, go visit 4hourbodybook.com, that is actually a process that I did with Tim Ferriss. And at the very beginning, what I have is I actually introduce Tim to my audience and I explain to them what they're going to learn and what they're going to get out of the free videos that I made. This is part of a process I teach called the 10 by 10 by 4 in my traffic geyser system. But the key is I need to introduce Tim and talk about the key things, the most important reasons why someone would want to take action and sign up for my class or to get more information. So, this is where you're answering that question. Who are you making this interview for? Remember, you're going to pick 2 or 3 people who could really benefit from this. In the case of the 4-Hour Body, Tim actually wrote the book for 2 key people. One was his father, who was more than 100 pounds overweight, and he was fearful for his life. So again, I got emotionally connected and emotionally associated with that. Now the next person that he wrote it for is a friend of his who is his same age, who used to be a big athlete and had put on a lot of weight. So he got connected with 2 people when he wrote the book, just like you'd get connected with 2 people who can benefit from the book. It's really the same psychology. So next, what are you going to teach? What is the audience going to learn when they're done? And then, here are the questions that you should try to answer after reading the book. So here's a couple ideas to get you going. What are the 3 top concepts the viewer will get out of this interview or this review? Next, who was this book written for? Who can or will get the most out of it? In this case, it was a 65-year-old man who was 100 pounds overweight, who the person really felt a connection with. The other person was a dear friend who he had seen basically his health go downhill, and here again, he was in fear of losing that person. Okay? Again, being emotionally connected creates a commitment in your mind, and it gives you a powerful reason, a powerful why for why you're going to do this. Okay? Next, what is the number 1 most important fact that your chosen audience needs to know that you learned in the book? Now you get to be the hero. Again, it associates you in a big emotional way. Here's another one. What are the 2 or 3 myths that have been busted by the author? Now, we know people in our lives who are regularly driven by some sort of falsehood, some sort of illusion or delusion. And if you can actually present facts and information that will push them over the edge, maybe you have an opportunity to actually change their lives, to influence or persuade them in some way. You're getting that information that's going to get you there, okay? Next, what are the 2 or 3 discoveries that the author made that are most important? Okay, so they've obviously, in the case of Tim, now he consulted with hundreds of professionals, dozens, if not close to hundreds of MDs and PhDs. So he clearly was able to gather an enormous amount of information and wield his incredible access that his first book gave him so he could get to these people and do the tests that he did. I mean, this is a remarkable amount of work for only $15. But what you're doing is you're giving your audience the opportunity to be fully engaged and give them a snapshot of all the best information here. Again, you get to be a hero. All right? Next, what are the first 2 to 3 action steps that someone should take from this book that can improve their lives? So, for example, what I did when I read Tim's book is I said, look, the majority of the people who are here right now would love to find a way to lose 20 pounds the fastest, easiest way possible. So is there a way, Tim, to do that without even exercising? And he said, absolutely. Here's what it is. Number 1, the moment you wake up, you need to consume about 30 grams of protein. That's going to get, so anyway, he gets into this whole thing. And he's got another little simple technique. Drinking 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice before you eat and 2 to 3 tablespoons of lemon juice after you eat actually lowers your blood glycemic index, which basically means you're going to process food without converting it into fat, which is going to be stored in your liver. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, really simple strategies. And it's really interesting stuff. Now, here's the next one. What are the 2 to 3 things the reader should avoid that you learn in this book? Well, one of the big things, of course, is anything that's white carbs, white rice, processed enriched grain, yada, yada, yada. Of course, sugar, fructose, okay? Fruit juice specifically, okay? So now, what are 2 to 3 things you didn't know that you learned from this that will make a difference in your life? So again, I connected with a couple of personal facts that I picked up out of it, and I found out, for example, that cinnamon is a very effective tool for lowering cholesterol. So I've been shaking a little cinnamon and putting it in my smoothie every day. Now, here's another one. If you had to pick one thing that is most important, what is it? Okay, so again, in my case, I learned about the importance of that 30 grams of protein immediately, within 30 minutes of waking up. That makes a huge difference. Now, I'm good about that, but now I've gotten better about timing it, and I've actually dropped about 3 to 4 pounds in a week with no other adjustment whatsoever. Now, what is the one thing you wish the author could have solved, answered, or explained that you want to know more about? All right, so I had a few things related to muscle gain, for example, and there were a couple unanswered questions that I had in here that I got to ask Tim in my interview that I did with him after the fact. I called it Success Leaves Clues, where I actually got into Tim's psychology. I asked him a lot about what drives him, what his motivating forces were. Okay, and another thing is, what did I learn about the author that is really fascinating or interesting? Well, I really didn't know about how he grew up and what motivated him and what made him who he is. I mean, this is a guy who's 33 years old and he's lived several lifetimes. And not only was I able to gather that and get into it, but it was really great to be able to share that, because I feel I was able to capture elements with Tim that I normally wouldn't have had any other opportunity or I hadn't seen before. And again, now in this case, I actually got to interview Tim, and I've been able to interview Harvey Mackay and Bill Glazer and Dan Kennedy, and that's been a great honor. One of my greatest mentors ever, who's had a profound influence on my life, is Tony Robbins. I've had the opportunity to interview him. But interviewing them in your mind is actually almost as good, And again, you're imagining yourself, you're putting in that area, and you're able to connect with them. And again, that's the beautiful thing about a book. I believe books are magical tools and devices. So, bottom line here is, get creative and come up with your own questions that you'd like to ask the author. And again, I just wanted to give you some basic ideas. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to review the step-by-step process one more time, and at least take you from point A to point B. And again, this whole thing will be transcribed and available along with the step-by-step process. So here's the most important thing of all is mindset. You start out with your intentions. Why am I reading this book? What do I want to learn? And positioning yourself as the teacher. That is really the key. And the second half that is also important is putting yourself in a place of service and commitment. Okay? Because when you practice and you share this information, that's what boosts your comprehension off the roof. I mean, I read Tim's book 2 times before I interviewed him. That's how excited I was. Now, the next process is the preparation. That's where all you're doing is you're putting inside your mind the covers, the flaps, the bullets, the table of contents, the index, and getting connected with the author by reading their bio, for example. The next step is the intentional or whole brain learning. And that's again where you put yourself in the mindset of you're going to get an opportunity to do a Vulcan mind meld with the author and pour all the information into your brain by doing the object recognition full brain scan. Again, you're programming your subconscious and you're flipping a page every 2 seconds or so. It's just bap, 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 bap. And again, this happens very, very rapidly. I'll go on to say, and again, this is the woo-woo part, but for about 2 years, what I did is I'd actually walk into bookstores and I'd literally just practice just this part. I'd do the flap, flap, scan, table of contents, index, and then I'd just whole brain it, and I'd walk out. And I'd basically burn through 3 books inside of maybe an hour, hour and 15 minutes, walk away and take a nap. Okay? And as weird as that may sound, I was able to comprehend major concepts from those books and rapidly learn large volumes of information. Now, the second step is the physical step. That's when you get your body involved, your physiology. And what I do is I scan through the entire book again with a pen and a highlighter. I highlight the key concepts and I'm writing down the answers to my questions. Where prior, I was writing down the questions I had. So that's basically going through that process of gathering my data and being a reporter. Now, the next step is the summarize process, and that's where I get associated with who I'm going to teach, what I'm going to present, and all the reasons why. I do a summary as if I'm going to introduce this, and I'm going to give them reasons why they want to be connected and associated, and I'm delivering it to the 1 or 2 people that are most important in my audience. And then I answer those basic questions that I gave you that are honestly, it's just good reporting. And the way I think about this, in the end, my psychology is not only am I going to be teaching, I'm going to be presenting this on television. Okay? So if one of your primary desires or needs, whether it's vanity or to be connected or associated, in my case, I love the fact that, I ask myself, who do I need to become right now to be attractive, interesting, and useful to my mentor or my hero or this author? Well, one of the things that I know they want is the opportunity to grow their platform, to get their message out there. So I become a tool, a vehicle, and a system for helping them do that. And one of the things that they need are great journalists and great reporters that can make them look good and be a genius and be bigger than they already are. And obviously it works because I've found it very easy now to gain access to some of my favorite people, some of my favorite authors, and along the process help them sell some books too and change some lives. So that's the end of this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And what I'd love it if you do is comment on my blog or wherever you're watching this video right now and tell me what you think of this process. If you have some other ideas, know that I'm always developing an additional psychological twist to it, another mindset, another way to process and prepare information. And remember, it's been modeled after absorbing a lot of information, and I'll stand here and humbly accept any ideas, comments, questions that you have. So once again, thank you so much for watching. And remember, books are magical tools. And if you can consume 10 times more books now because of this resource, just imagine how that's going to affect your life and affect the people who are in it. So thanks for watching. My name is Mike Koenigs, and I look forward to seeing you online sometime soon. Bye-bye.